Good morning and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. Happy Monday as well. Today, Lovin Malta also has something to celebrate. It's our fourth year anniversary. How are you doing, Tim?
Not bad. 4 years gone by in a flash, right?
4 years gone by in a flash, yes. So we'll be celebrating that throughout the day, but I just want to start with our headlines of today. So first of all, some good news yesterday. Malta only registered one case of COVID-19 and another 19 patients have recovered. We're going to be talking a bit about that and also a bit about some of the fines that were issued yesterday. Big story over the weekend, the Prime Minister and the Armed Forces of Malta is officially under investigation for two incidents regarding migrants at sea. We'll go into the details of what happened and some of the reactions by the public and the both political parties. We'll also be speaking about the wage supplement that the government introduced and how that's not being given to students who get a stipend, and some controversy around that. I think there's also a petition. Today also happens to be 420, which is a bit like the gay pride of cannabis users. And in fact, the government has given out its first ever 420 message to say that Malta has 40,000 cannabis users. And we'll speak a bit more about what that message said. And also the Chinese embassy has unveiled plans for a massive new home on a large tract of Greenland in Pembroke. So we'll also be discussing that. So Tim, maybe you can start by taking us through the first story about Malta only confirming one case.
Hey, Chris. Hello, everyone. So, yes, as you rightly said, yesterday Malta only confirmed a single new case of COVID-19, along with 19 more recoveries. So we are currently, as of the time of speaking, we're down to 306 active cases. And, all things considered, it's pretty good so far compared to the way, other countries have had to deal with this crisis. Our hospitals don't seem to be burdened at all yet. Obviously, we cannot relax yet. Not out of the woods. Yesterday was a Sunday, and there seems to be a phenomenon around the world where fewer cases are registered on weekends, probably because fewer people will get tested then. In fact, we had fewer swab tests than usual yesterday, and Professor Shaumen Gauchi said that some people actually didn't come to their scheduled appointments. But still, it's one new case, 19 more recoveries.
So I guess we're gonna see a bit like today how things develop, right? Whether we go to 0 cases or have another small single-digit number of cases, or whether it picks up again, right? I think it's got something to do with the number of tests, as you're saying, maybe even sometimes the quality of testing. We know that there are some issues there where sometimes the testing isn't done properly enough.
It's also, you can't look at it from one day to the next, though. You have to look at it as a trend line, right? You have to look at it. I think a weekly average is more accurate than just a day-to-day numbers, but they fluctuate. So especially in a country as small as Malta, one day you'll get 6. So on our worst day we got 52 new cases. The following day it was below 10. So it's very.
We also have a high average, right, compared to other countries
we have a high average in terms of testing. So we're within the top countries in the world in terms of how many tests are being carried out, which obviously then means that there's a higher chance that cases are being caught early on before they can either get worse themselves or pass the infection on to somebody who will require serious hospitalization.
We also yesterday had 96 fines dished out by the police due to public gatherings, people being in groups of more than 3. And we also had 56 fines for excessive speeding. This is quite interesting as well, how a lot of drivers seem to be taking advantage of the less people on the road to to speed up. We also had a story over the weekend about the Malta Developers Association President Sandro Ketkuti, whose car was seen, was filmed on a dash cam speeding as well. And I think there's also information coming out about the situation in Hal Far. So we now know that about 20 random tests are being done every day. Hal Far the Hal Far Open Center is considered to be likely to be one of the hotspots of contagion because there's 1,000 people, in one space, and there have already been cases of being tested positive. The Hal Far Open Center is in quarantine. We'll move on to the second story, which is regarding rescue at sea. So. Officially, the Prime Minister, the Armed Forces of Malta Brigadier, and the crew of a patrol boat are under investigation after NGO Republica filed 2 police reports regarding 2 separate incidents. So one of the incidents was a boat out at sea. Allegedly, the AFM went to that boat and sabotaged the engine, and this boat was later eventually brought to Malta anyway. So the government has not denied the sabotage, although the lawyer of the armed forces has now said, all the soldiers will be denying any wrongdoing. So we'll see how that develops. There was also another case where Malta refused to go out and rescue the migrants at sea. We know that at least 5 dead bodies were found, another 7 are presumed drowned, and the rest were returned to Libya. And so this has sparked, obviously, a lot of controversy in that sense. What we know is that the Everest Bartolo, the Foreign Affairs Minister, was on COVID calls over the weekend on Saturday, and he spoke about how this was one of the hardest parts in his very long career, how this was a terrible situation, and Malta has been placed in this impossible situation between having to choose, whether to protect its shores and its people from COVID-19, and also be able to rescue migrants at sea in pursuant of its international obligations. We, at the same time, the Prime Minister has spoken a little bit differently on Sunday. He even, I would say, went as far as to downplay the deaths by saying, this Republica report was about migrants who are now having lunch in Hal Far, so kind of giving the impression that no one had actually died. But we do know that deaths were there. And there's also, I think that there was also the initiative coinciding this weekend with this political discourse where people were encouraged to put out flags or Maltese flags outside their balconies, and many did this in support of the AFM. So there was all of that, and there was also the Nationalist Party. Tim, maybe you can talk to us a bit about sort of what's happening on the Nationalist Party's front in terms of this story.
Okay, so basically, Republica's criminal complaint was filed by Jason Azzopardi, who is a lawyer, but he's also a very vocal spokesperson and MP for the Nationalist Party. And Robert Abella pounced on this. He said that Jason Azzopardi had filed this complaint that is accusing him of murder during these very sensitive times. Is going to waste the resources of the government and of the armed forces, and meanwhile, as well as demoralizing them. And there was quite a large reaction, right? I mean, there was a huge backlash. Mm-hmm. And in Jason Azzopardi, they found a face. So, and he faced the brunt of it. And the opposition leader, Adrian Delia, then supported him. He defended him. He said that he was just acting in his capacity as a lawyer, and even Republica's request for an investigation was perfectly valid because there were reports of these alleged abuses, alleged sabotage, and that they deserve to be investigated. However, he also said that from now on, lawyers who are also MPs will have to advise the party if there's, if their work is particularly sensitive and might actually impact the policies of the party. Meanwhile, yesterday Republica announced it's ready to withdraw its criminal complaint against the crew of the boat. So not against the prime minister, not against the chief of the army, but against the crew themselves, if the government launches an inquiry. Now, to me, I don't know what you make of this, but this does seem like a bit of a U-turn. I mean, I suspect that they're feeling the heat. They didn't get much public support whatsoever. That a lot of people were very hurt by what they did, and there was this assumption that they were supporting, that they were trying to use this occasion as to score political points during this very sensitive time. So I think they're feeling the heat and they're trying to.
Yeah, I think it's quite clear that the public is heavily, obviously, in support of frontliners, heavily in support of our armed forces, and doesn't have and even if these incidents occurred in the way that they occurred, that the AFM should not be a target of that. Rather, it should be the decision makers, right? Who should be. So there is some, but at the same time, if an inquiry has to happen, it has to involve all of the crew. So it will be interesting to see how this develops over the next few days, and also whether the government is going to act in the same way when it comes to future migrant boats arriving in Malta. Next story, Tim, we've got students being left out of the wage supplement.
So basically, working students students or full-time students have a part-time job to supplement their income have found out that they have been left out of the government's wage supplement scheme, which subsidizes salaries for businesses who have been badly impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, on the grounds that they already receive income in the form of a stipend. Obviously, this is a bit ironic because obviously a stipend isn't much. It's something like €80 a month, and the reason that these people find a part-time job while studying in the first place is because the stipend isn't enough. So isn't enough money. So I don't know. I just really don't see how it makes any sense whatsoever to discriminate between workers. So normal workers will benefit from this wage supplement scheme, but if you're a student, tough luck to you. You have to make do with your stipend, and yes, I don't. It just seems incredibly unfair.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how the government responds to this. Now, obviously, the one thing to note is that the organization raising awareness about this problem is Pulse, which is the Labour-leaning student political body. So that would be interesting to see whether something changes on that count. Our next story is about 420. 420 is the 20th of April, used in cannabis culture to be a sort of day of celebration. It's very similar to Pride for the LGBT community. And Malta, as we know, has been considering or toying with the idea of legalizing or decriminalizing cannabis for a number of years now. Our parliamentary secretary, junior minister for equality and reforms, is Rosiane Kutayar, and she seems to be quite keen on getting things going over here. And in fact, today she issued a video shot at Top of the World in Gargour, where she talks about breaking the stigma against cannabis users. She mentions that Malta has an estimated 40,000 cannabis users, which might sound like much higher than most people thought. And it also goes to show, I think the message over there is this is a significant political lobby group as well, in the sense that the government is going to need to kind of respond to the desires of these 40,000 cannabis users. What did you make of her video, Tim?
I think it was quite impressive, right? I mean, it's basically just under 2 minutes long, but there's no direct policies. There's no direct policies on what the government plans to do to address the situation, but the direction is very clear. So it's she actually mentioned people like Barack Obama, people like Justin Trudeau, Michael Phelps, Steve Jobs, who people have all admitted to have said that they smoked cannabis. And the whole point of this is, to show people that cannabis users are not just a bunch of losers, deadbeat people, who just want to do nothing all day, but you can be extremely successful. You can be amongst the most successful people in the world and still enjoy taking cannabis. And the whole point of this is to reduce the stigma surrounding the plant. And the timing at the moment isn't great for a debate about the topic because of COVID, but it's great to see that the person in charge has these ideas. Remember that this was an electoral promise from a few years back. The process has completely stalled. We've heard basically nothing for years. There's been a lot of consultation, comments here and there, but no actual policy, no actual law. Hopefully we'll see things moving in the near future.
There's been some movement on the cannabis industry front, especially the medical industry. Today on COVID Calls at 4:20, we will be discussing cannabis in respect to even sort of what's happening with COVID. We had the NGO Relief that issued a statement last week, and we're going to be exploring a bit their views on this point. Last story of today, Tim, Chinese embassy.
Yes, so the Chinese embassy has just unveiled plans to construct a pretty massive new building on a large tract of green land in Pembroke. So there's two aspects of the story, and the first of all is the clear instant environmental impact of this. It's more green land, we don't have much of it, and yet more of it is going to be used up.
20,000 square meters.
20,000 square meters. And to construct an embassy. And obviously, once in terms of an embassy, like once it belongs to someone, to another country, it's literally their land then. So it's quite an important political decision in terms of giving land to an embassy. But the second point is that it's a pretty large embassy. Now, most embassies in Malta they aren't big at all. In fact, many of them actually share space. With one difference, with one exception, which is the United States Embassy in Taali, and this could be comparable in size to it. And it just seems interesting to see, when you look at the diplomatic tit for tat going on at the moment between China and the US. Not just at the moment, it's been going on for a while, but particularly now, in light of COVID, the United States is accusing China of covering up the true extent of the virus in its cities, and you're seeing that China wants to now consolidate its presence in Malta to the construction of a larger embassy as well. So it certainly sees Malta as a strategic country as well.
A number of angles around that. There's the conservation. Obviously, this is a tract of land in Pembroke that is within the development zone, but it's just next to a special area of conservation. The price tag for this plot of land was around 7.8 million, and the decision was actually taken in unanimity between the government and the opposition back in 2015. But we'll see now whether the NGOs have something to say about this, and what the diplomatic considerations around such a move. So that brings us to the end of our program. Again, today is the 4th anniversary of Lovin Malta. So thank you all, those people who have followed us and supported us and even criticized us throughout the years. That's it from Tim and myself for Lovin Daily. Do check in at 4:20 for COVID calls, and follow lovinmalta.com for the rest of our stories of the day. And have a day full of loving.